There's a select few people that are so skilled that watching them perform feels like watching magic.
Watch the clock, it's goal for Bolt, and again, he's done it again!
Those who are so refined at their craft that they make even the most difficult moves look effortless.
Faker may be in trouble here, Denmark tries to clean it up for Ryu. Oh, look at the cleanse, look at the moves! Faker, what was that?
These individuals are modern-day magicians. Magicians go a step beyond just beating their competition. They are the ones who change the very perception of what is thought to be possible in their discipline.
Stewie's won the round, we go to overtime!
But while they may make it seem effortless, it never comes easy. Each act from these magicians is the result of thousands of hours of dedicated practice, so that just for a moment, they can get as close as possible to perfection. In the world of Trackmania speedrunning, the player Mudda was willing to do just about anything for his final performance. This is the story of one of the greatest world records ever achieved. The story begins in 2015, when the mapmaker Winty released his ultimate Trackmania map, a creation he had worked on for more than 500 hours. 128 cubed Deep Fear. It was designed to be the hardest full-speed map in the entire game, and the scale of it is monumental. Deep Fear is comprised of over 12,000 individual blocks, and it contains 420 jumps, drop-downs, and stunts. Then with some loops, turnovers, and wall rides in the mix, you have yourself an absolute beast of a map. The track route is structured into 10 checkpoint segments, each one about 60 seconds long. So a full run from start to finish is over 10 minutes of non-stop driving. But actually completing the track takes much longer than that. The majority of these segments are so difficult that you won't be passing them on your first try, or even your 10th try. Each segment can take hundreds of attempts to clear just once. In every sector there are so many obstacles you have to avoid. There are short jump combinations that require extreme car control, and massive jumps that require precise aim. And all the roller coaster elements, like loops, wall rides, and tubes, where great racing trajectories are necessary to maintain high speed. That last point really is the most crucial though, as everything has to be done at full speed. Deep Fear is built in such a way that if you ever drop an ounce of speed, you're destined to crash, as you will no longer be fast enough for the following jumps. It is brutal. But luckily, when you finally reach a new checkpoint, you can always respawn from that point and keep going. As Winty in his own words said, without these respawn routes, the track would be literally impossible for humans to finish. It would take 5 years after its release before Deep Fear saw its first finishers. But in June of 2020, there was a lot of hype around the track, and several players managed to conquer it, including myself. And I speak from experience in saying that it is as hard as it looks, if not even harder, as it took me 13 hours to pass the 10 checkpoints. It was during this time that many of the best full-speed players started competing for the world record on Deep Fear. Their first runs also took them several hours, but as they did more and more completions, they were able to overcome most of the difficult parts in only a few respawns, eventually pushing the record below 20 minutes. Soon we will take a look at these records, but in order to fully appreciate them, we should start by taking a closer look at the checkpoints. The first 3 segments on the map can sort of be grouped together. They are challenging to pass on a first run, but with a bit of practice they aren't actually that bad, and can be done with relative consistency. You have a solid amount of space to work with, and since there aren't that many obstacles, crashing isn't the biggest concern. The main difficulty comes in aiming on the big jumps, and precise approaches into loops and wall rides. The speed difference between a correct wall ride trajectory and a suboptimal one can be quite drastic. Same also goes for loops. If players drive inaccurate trajectories, they will be too slow for the next jumps. But as you approach the 4th segment, things immediately get more difficult. Here you have to use a trick called the speed slide to get fast enough to clear the next jump. At high speeds in Trackmania, the car accelerates faster when it's sliding compared to having full grip with the surface. And top full speed players take advantage of this everywhere they can. Speed slides are only effective when you slide at a very precise angle, and that angle is constantly changing based on how fast you're going. Players have discovered that they can look at the overlap of the skid marks behind the car to estimate the ideal sliding angle. Making adjustments to your angle when all you have to work with is staring at this is very difficult. But the first speed slide on the map is not too punishing, and a decent one will let you reach checkpoint 4. Later speed slides are not so kind, as they require absolute perfection. At checkpoint 4, the main difficulty is lining up the car in between this row of pillars and this super intense sequence of jumps that requires ultimate car control. The checkpoint also has a nice backflip. On the 5th checkpoint, an important theme is to reduce airtime, since anytime the car is in the air, it isn't accelerating on the ground. In order to do this, players will use what's called a flow trick. When approaching a jump, quickly steering to the left and then to the right will tilt the car in the air, causing it to land much sooner. Flow tricks work because each steering movement displaces the car's center of gravity. Players take advantage of this by first shifting the weight to one side, and then with precise timing, they shift it back just at the edge of the jump, and the movement keeps tilting the car in the air. While it's necessary to do this on some jumps, there are also spots on Deep Fear where you have the opposite challenge, as several jumps require that the car has no tilt at all. As long as you have a good understanding of air control, checkpoint 5 lands in the middle of the scale in terms of difficulty. But from here on out, it really just gets worse and worse. Checkpoint 6 has multiple hard parts, but the toughest of all is this straight line of dirt, with gaps in between the roads. When driving it, you exit out of a loop where you immediately have to aim for a small gap on the right side in the distance. But since these dirt roads are notoriously bumpy, you might get several weird bounces or angle changes that you have to react to in a moment's notice, else you'll fly right off the track. It's really tough to get through the gap, and when I played the track, it took me an hour to just get past it once. The 7th segment is near the very top of the difficulty, as you have to aim this massive jump spanning across a 20-block gap, and land at the top of the downhill in order to be fast enough for the next jump. Then what follows is several precise transitions and a backflip where you again must land at the top of the ramp to have enough speed. The 8th segment is really just more of the same, but it's a bit more lenient than checkpoint 7. The main feature is one big speed slide that you have to do to be fast enough, and a front flip thereafter. Now it's time to take a look at the 2 hardest parts of Deep Fear. In my own playthrough of the track, I reached checkpoint 9 with 4 hours on the timer, and from here I would spend another 9 hours just to clear the final 120 seconds of driving. The last 2 segments are absolutely ridiculously difficult. On checkpoint 9, the main crux is an awfully precise sequence, where you have to maneuver between bumps and obstacles to keep your speed. Here you are going at 600 out of a wall ride, where you have to act quickly to set up the car in the small gap on the side. After landing, you must head further left to get high enough on the ramp that you get through the fake finish. And immediately as you land there, you must steer slightly left to get to the dirt platform. And now you have to prepare the car to transition to the road, because as soon as the wheels touch it, the car has way more traction. This sudden change of grip is really difficult to predict, and the fact that a pillar is placed on the transition is just fantastic. To make matters worse, there is one more factor on this checkpoint that makes it horribly difficult, and that is the bugs. As much as I love Trackmania Nations Forever, it is far from a perfectly coded game, and this only shows up more the faster you are going. Whenever you cross the grey borders on the side of the road, there's a chance you get what's known as a RAMMSTEIN bug, where the wheels suddenly lift into the air and you lose control of the car. That's one possible bug you can get, but there's another one which is arguably worse, called the landing bug, where if you land on this border, the game thinks you crashed into the ground, causing you to lose speed. This bug can also happen if you land exactly on the grille surrounding the pillar. It is really not great. With all the different bugs that can happen in this exact part, your margin for error comes down to a tiny gap, barely the size of the car itself. Landing in any other area, you are at the mercy of the game not giving you a run-ending bug. But if you manage to do all of that in real time, you should be fast enough to make the big jump up to the high platform, and a few difficult transitions later, you will be at the last checkpoint of Deep Fear. Most players are nervous, exhausted, and thrilled to finally get here, as you are just a minute of driving away from beating one of Trackmania's hardest full-speed maps. But like a final boss fight, the last checkpoint is the toughest of them all. This entire segment is based on trying to snowball as much speed as possible. At the end of the checkpoint, there's a massive jump, where you need to reach the magical number 712 speed to make it up to a ring checkpoint. It's a ridiculous speed check. The checkpoint starts out with a jump onto a dirt patch, where you have to speed slide as you land. It continues with a few drop downs and a really tough downhill transition sequence that only works when the weight of the car is perfectly stable. You have to go up early into the tube and exit early as well, so that you get low airtime onto the block and a small speed slide on the dirt once more, before entering the next wall ride. Here you must hit a perfect corner on both the entry and the exit to preserve speed, and jump low to the next quarter pipe blocks. Then what remains is jumping out of the quarter pipe onto the road underneath the pipe, stabilizing the car in a split second to transition to a small platform piece and getting past the pillars, jumping onto the road and setting up for one more dirt speed slide to the left to try to get the straightest line through the loop possible. And when exiting the loop, you have to do one final speed slide on the dirt. If all of that goes absolutely flawless, you will be exactly fast enough to make this jump. Executing all of this once took me hundreds of attempts, and a total of 6 hours of trying. It is stupidly difficult. But then you have the magicians. Someone who can take something so tough as this and make all of it look easy. This is where we meet Mudda, one of the greatest full speed players to ever grace the game of Trackmania. Mudda had been playing Trackmania Nations Forever for over 10 years and was getting ready to leave the game behind. But before doing so, he wanted one final record as a crowning achievement in the game, and he chose Deep Fear as the stage for his performance. Watching him play was both beautiful and terrifying. After a few runs through the track, he had no problem doing the first 3 checkpoints back to back without respawning. He managed to make the narrow and intense parts on checkpoint 4 seem easy and controllable. The big jumps on checkpoint 5 looked trivial, and the dirt bumps on checkpoint 6 looked consistent. Him and the player Don't Care would both manage to beat the map in under 20 minutes, taking just a few attempts on average for each of the difficult segments. But since Mudda wanted this to be his crowning achievement, he set his mind on one specific goal: beating Deep Fear in its entirety without respawning once. Any player who has tried this map will tell you that that is straight up impossible, even for the world's best full speed player. With all the aforementioned bugs that can happen, all the precise details that make up the track, it seemed far too precise for any human to execute. But Mudda didn't really care what people thought. He had raised the bar as high as he possibly could, and little by little, he kept trying to improve his time. On the 23rd of June, he again one-shot the first 4, and he also managed to one-shot the tricky dirt part thereafter. 6 out of 10. 4 segments left to go. Segment 7 went smooth as butter, getting the perfect downhill landing on the jump. And on segment 8, the front flip worked as well. Tension was high as this was the first one he'd ever gotten to this point without any respawns. And now he entered the 2 hardest segments.
Part 1. It's all up to RNG now. I knew it. I knew it. I knew that was gonna happen.
He had driven 9 minutes and 30 seconds perfectly, 95% of the track driven one shot, but the tiniest amount of body roll caused the car to tilt on the transition, resulting in a crash. He still continued the run and finished with a new world record of 12:07. But the feeling he was left with was obviously disappointment. The missed opportunity meant it was back to the grind, where most attempts would not get past the 4th segment due to bugs, body roll, and small inaccuracies. He kept grinding for the next week, and on the 1st of July, he had another great run that one-shot far into the map.
Perfect. That was perfect. No adjustment needed. Why did I do that? When have I ever done that? Come on, man. I was too far left when I jumped. I got all the good RNG and then I just jumped too far left. Oh my god. Oh my. Did I just save that with 3 SDs? What a PB. God damn it! Now I'm so mad it crashed! 1 respawn, man. And it's the dumbest, that was the dumbest mistake I've ever made at CPA. Like, I just bonked straight into the block.
10:56, a new world record and so tantalizingly close to his goal. 1 small fail on a drop down was the only thing he missed to beat the map in its entirety without respawns. And this mistake especially hurt, since it wasn't due to bugs or bad luck. He was just slightly off target by a few pixels. But that same day, Trackmania 2020 released, and Mudda decided to put his Deep Fear project on the back burner to instead focus on this new Trackmania game. But half a year later, he finally found time to grind Deep Fear again. It took him a little bit of time to de-rust and memorize the flow of the map, but soon enough, he was right back where he left off.
There it is, guys. He joined for the new record.
In this new world record, he only had 2 respawns, both of which were due to very unfortunate bugs. One of them in the narrow section on checkpoint 4, and the other a landing bug at the very start of checkpoint 9. Apart from that, he'd play the map perfectly once again. But bugging on Deep Fear wasn't a rare occurrence anymore. It was the norm, and the run he was chasing would be a statistical outlier. On the 20th of December, he had a run on an estimated pace of 10 minutes 40, when he managed to build up too much speed for the big jump, reaching 7:15 as he left the uphill, causing him to fly too far and not being fast enough to make the following drop down smoothly. The margin for error on that jump came down to hitting either 712 or 713 speed. Otherwise, the ending would not work. The day after that, Mudda would be rewarded for his extreme perseverance and effort, when he finally got this run on Deep Fear.
It's done. No! Are you kidding me? Of all places! I am fucking done. I cannot believe that just happened.
1 single drop down away, at the precipice of glory and everything he worked for, Mudda's car landed on the border of the road, making the game think he crashed with the surface and giving him a landing bug. Had his car been slightly to the left or slightly to the right, he would have had enough speed to make it to the finish. But it landed in the worst possible spot at the worst possible time. It's one of the most heartbreaking fails in Trackmania history. After 400 hours of grinding 1 track, and having cleared 99% of it, and getting a bug on the very last jump, rendering all the effort worthless. Mudda was disheartened, but the community all gathered to cheer him on. Both him and the community knew that he could do it. It would take him a few days before his next attempt at the ending, but on New Year's Eve, he one-shot all the first 8 checkpoints once more. The tension and the nerves rose, as everyone watching held their breaths, hoping that this would finally be the one.
Come on, CB9. Holy shit. Come on. Come on. No! It gave me a fucking nosedive! God damn it! Oh no! Thank you! Fucking hell!
10 minutes and 6 seconds. The small bump he got only cost him about 5 seconds. And apart from that, he beat everything else on Trackmania's hardest full speed map first try. It was a spectacular accomplishment, and also a run that made Mudda unsure if he would ever hunt the map again. He had already set a record so strong that it was unlikely anyone would ever beat him. He still hadn't completed the goal he set out for, but he was so burnt out from grinding the map, both emotionally and physically. The stress and the nerves of being on a good run, of concentrating for 10 minutes at a time without any moment to lose focus, and repeated heartbreaks of failing several times so close to the finish, was draining. He was almost ready to leave the map behind, but the thought of the one-shot run kept plaguing his mind, and even more so, the idea of a 9 minutes 59 seconds time being possible. It's not often that a pristine run lines up with such a distinct minute barrier, but on Deep Fear, a 9-minute time was just barely in reach if you played the map at an extreme level. The segmented run made by the author in 2015 made no mistakes at all, so to reach the sub 10, you'd have to take massive risks everywhere. To gain those 5 seconds, the focus was no longer on survival and avoiding respawns. You had to actively push the boundaries of the track everywhere you could, including adding several speed slides and reducing airtime on every jump. Most top players will tell you that this approach to Deep Fear is absolutely mental. It would be like adding several extra notes to hit in the world's hardest Guitar Hero song before anyone has full cleared it in its current form. Playing this way put the Deep Fear grind into a whole nother dimension, but the idea of breaking the sub 10 was the only thing that enticed Mudda to push on. In the autumn of 2022, after about a year break, the king of full speed returned to Deep Fear, streaming his grind towards the sub 10 every day. He would play for an average of 4 hours, but sometimes upwards of 11 hours each session, and he was getting closer and closer. One big problem Mudda encountered is that he was actually getting too fast for the map. All the speed slides and low jumps he did made him way too fast for what the mapper had calculated. So in certain spots, he had to compensate by slowing down. The most dangerous spots were in Sector 7, before the big drop down. It was also a problem in the last checkpoint sector. When his nerves and stress would be at the highest, he had to execute 3 perfect brake taps to slow his car down just right, to hit the magical 712 number. If he pressed the brake button for a little too long, he could never recover the lost speed. But if he didn't slow down enough, he would crash out regardless. The only benefit of playing this way was that he could carry extremely high speed in all other segments, at the cost of potentially making more mistakes. But it also meant that every run that escaped out of the starting checkpoints was on pace for the sub 10. After 2 years of playing Deep Fear, and 800 hours of methodical practice, memorization, and grinding, after enduring heartbreaks and burnout, and after getting so many great attempts that never quite made it, all of Mudda's hard work culminated into one spectacular performance, when on the 13th of October, he finally got this run.
Have I ever ran Oach? No. I don't plan to either. This is the last map I'm ever playing in this game. Once Deep Fear is done, that's it. Never playing TMNF ever again for any reason. Nice. No problem. All right. There we go. That was close. Oh. Ah! That was scary. Barely fast enough. Wait for grip. Nice. Oh. Oh! Alright. Rage 712. That's your job. Rage 712. Oh my god! No, no way. No way! It's actually done! Holy shit! 9:59!
9:59.19. A new world record and one of the most astonishing records ever achieved in Trackmania Nations Forever. It's the result of so much hard work and patience that it likely never will be repeated by anyone. Mudda poured his heart and soul into this map, and though he got discouraged at times, he still pushed on for over 2 years, until he reached perfection. And so, he could finally uninstall Trackmania Nations Forever and give all his focus to competitive play, where he is currently also among the best in the world. Magicians might make their performances look effortless, but as I hope this video demonstrates, the only way to get there is by doing the hard work. Reaching your peak in any discipline is one of the toughest journeys you can embark on, but with methodical practice and patience, you can eventually achieve even more than you thought you were capable of. I highly suggest you go over to Mudda's original video and watch the run in its entirety. It's mesmerizing. And leave a comment as well of appreciation. It is beyond words how great of a record it is, and I hope his perseverance inspires you to go out and do something you've always wanted to do yourself. Anyways, that's all for now, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a good one.